The following program frequently combines snark with clever innuendo. We really hope that you aren't offended. Really. We will even give you a safe space. There. Isn't that better?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the following program. I'm your host, Joe Neerman, aka Good Logic. I have to say something. It's really nice having an attorney. It is really nice having an attorney because there's work. There's work to be done. And I was just like, I have an attorney. Why can't he do this work? Why am I doing this work? I have an attorney. This doesn't make any sense. This makes no sense. Yeah, I'm representing myself, but, you know, the heavy lifting portion of it. Yeah, I got an attorney. And apparently a rather competent attorney. I plan on bringing him on tomorrow. You're going to get to meet Ron Baruti, my counsel. Well, technically not my counsel, Good Logic's counsel, to be technically accurate. I'm still acting pro se. But the counsel for Good Logic LLC, Ron Baruti, will be visiting us tomorrow. You'll get to hear from him yourselves. And I tell you, what I've seen of his paperwork so far, excellent job. Excellent job. You probably have not seen his paperwork yet. That's part of my updates. That's part of my updates. Yeah. I'll be updating you about that ongoing little fiasco. As to, wow, this is kind of a crazy situation, and I'll give you all details. I will be factual. You know, I'm going to be very clear here with you. I'm going to tell you facts as to, in my best estimation, how things have proceeded. I'll let you draw your own conclusions. I'm not going to be drawing conclusions for you. I'm just going to tell you, this is what happened. Then this is what happened. Then this is what happened. Then that happened. Stuff like that. That's how it's going to go. That's how it's going to go. The reason I think that that's professional is because I am an officer of the court. I made a commitment to uphold the court and its procedures. And this is New York court procedures. And I don't think it's appropriate for me to weigh in with opinion. So I will give you just fact as to what happened. You can all draw your own conclusions. Please do not send me super chats, which are designed to elicit a statement from me, which may be construed as me expressing an opinion on that. Now, I will express my opinion about decisions and orders that I disagree with, obviously, as I'm doing with respect to this motion, where I think that this contempt order is unconstitutional. I think it breaks the law. But with respect to particular individuals who are associated here, I am certainly going to be withholding my opinion because I think that's the professional way to proceed. So, there you go. There you go. Before we get to that, in case you missed it, Trump was held in contempt for the 10th time today. Count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times he's been held in contempt. Today, the judge added a little bit of a wrinkle, an interesting wrinkle, where he threatened jail time. Let's get the report on this. Let's get the report from CBS News, because they're the first one I found of a proper length. He's eliciting opinion right now. I don't think that would be appropriate. Yeah. They tried getting more than one contempt today. They got one. I think they tried for 3 by my estimation. And the one they got it on, it's really surprising. Really surprising. It's like, that's really shaving with a very, very fine razor there. I don't really get it. I don't understand it. I'm a little confused. We'll look at that decision as well. Decision from the court. 30 seconds of my legal fees. God bless you. God bless you. That's not 30 seconds of legal fees. Wait, let me do the math on that. I gotta do my math. 30 seconds of my legal fee. No. This right here. This right here is more than 30 seconds of my legal fees. That's definitely more than 30 seconds of my legal fees. Let me just give a little bam right there. God bless you. God bless you, Bella Stella. Let me just give. Who is gifted? Who is gifted memberships to the following? Who are new followers? Ooh, new followers. Just Dawn. That's not your first. This is not your first rodeo. Robin Sage, Beavis Jones, Raketa Befallen. Nah, Matt Murphy, Susan. Oh, interesting. David Noble, Lulu Foon, Marilee McClure, Stephanie Franks. All of you gifted memberships courtesy of the one and only Bella Stella. I'm going to give her another bell just because I can. Because she There you go. Here's the bell. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, if you're new to this sort of thing, that if I'm in the following, that means I'm following somebody. If you're wondering who you're following, the answer is, well, the only known leader of this group. There might be more than one, to be honest with you. But the only known one is this individual right here. Worcestershire leader. There you go. Because I am not the following. A lot of people make this mistake. A lot of people say, oh, Joe, he's the leader of the following. He's got this whole culty cult thing going on. Nothing could be further from the truth. I am neither the leader of the following. I'm a follower just like you. And the following is not at all a cult type of cult. At all. So yeah, it's really just about community, unity, and some leadership training, and maybe some personal growth. Hopefully some personal growth is very important. Very, very important. I highly recommend personal growth. You feel better about yourself. I was explaining to somebody today. I'm trying to remember. Oh, no, I said this on Locals. Oh, never mind that. All right. I have a lot to update you about that sort of thing. But we're going to come to the updates about the gag order and my efforts to ungag. That's going to come a little later in the show. First, I want to get into the contempt. So without further ado, let's look at the contempt order as reported by CBS News. CBS. Because, if there's news, CBS is going to do their best to let you think about it, to make sure you think about it the way they want you to think about it. Give it to us, CBS. Frame it how you want.
All right, so we have a bit of an update for you on the Trump so-called hush money trial. You can see the president.
Not a hush money trial. You're off to a bad start. Nope. You have no ability, jurisdiction, authorization to retitle, to relabel anything. That's not what that's not the role of the leader. The leader simply leads. There's no designation of the overall parameters of the cult. Thank you very much. Not a cult. You got me saying it now. Oh, gosh. Let's hear a chauffeur for Bella Stella. Hey, Joe, a tip of the autographed hat to you. Hey. Worcestershire, you got your hat, right? You got your hat. I don't remember hearing you say you got it, but I'm sure you must have gotten it by now. I still owe Janelle Rella hers. Let's get into this.
President there, I think this is earlier today, moments ago, walking into the courthouse, doing his usual talking to the cameras. But what we have learned is that the judge has once again sorry, let's look at this. Found that he has been in contempt for 4 more additional gag order violations. So we don't know which gag order violations this is.
No, honey. No. They tried getting him on 4 more. They got him on 1.
The judge didn't specify, but these would be violations, I presume, that occurred.
See, this is legacy media right here. See, bloggers are not news. This is news right here. What do you mean hat issues? What kind of hat issues? I sent it like all the way to like across the pond. I sent it across the pond. Across the pond! I don't want to hear about hat issues. I sent it across the pond! I don't want to hear about it. I assume that your hat must be like in transit on a really big boat made entirely out of wood with like Irish slaves just sort of rowing. Ho! Ho! And somewhere in the back there is this precious box containing an NYPD hat with my scribbling all over it. That's what I'm assuming has happened to your hat. That's my best guess. But it definitely went out. You see, Pam got hers. Bella Stella got hers. You broke 21K and you give Sango congrats. I saw that. Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited. Very, very excited. I know Ron didn't. Ron, when I told him, I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get that money that you need, that 25. He's like, a lot of people say that, and then they never get 5,000. I was like, I'm pretty sure this one. I can't tell you. I'm not Nostradamus, but hat's stuck in Baltimore. I don't know what that means. All right, let's get. Let's see what. Let's let CBS deliver the news to you. A real news media, a real news organization, unlike those bloggers. Those bloggers don't know what they're talking about.
After his initial round of fines for previous violations.
How many were there? How many were there? I'm testing you. How many? Yeah, there were 9. There were 9 in the first round.
You may know that he's been fined, I believe, $9,000 for gag order violations. That's $1,000 each. And the judge says it appears that the $1,000 fines are not serving as a deterrent. Therefore, going forward, this court will have to consider a jail sanction if it is recommended. So normally, somebody who has not been the president of the United States could face jail time.
Normally, a person who's not president of the United States would not have been indicted. That's normally. I'm only saying that because no New Yorker or other person has ever been charged by the state of New York with violating 175-10 of the New York Penal Code in order to conceal a federal crime. That's just never happened. So that's why I'm saying normally there would be no indictment. Normally there would be no gag order, because apparently when it comes to gag orders, the court felt there was a special Donald Trump is particularly dangerous rule, which I vehemently disagree with, as you may have guessed. So that's what's normal. Normal. You talk about normal. Like, I can't believe he's letting him get away with it again. It's like he's not getting away. This entire thing. Did you see what he got gagged for? Did you see what he got slapped for? We're going to take a look at what he got slapped for. We're going to take a look at it because, oh my God, really? That was I was shocked. I was like, I don't even know. I'm confused. I'm confused personally. Maybe I'm stupid. It's possible. Maybe I'm ignorant. I just don't understand it.
For these sort of situations, but there's
these sort of situations, there's no gag.
A lot.
Let's bear in mind also, okay? You know, when you talk about gag order and the fair administration of justice, this is not some freaking, like what quadruple homicide that he's charged with. He's charged with falsifying business records. I mean, everyone loses sight of this part also, which I don't bring up in my papers anywhere, but you talk about gagging someone. I mean, this is seriously a low-level felony that we're gagging him for. I mean, we're gagging him for because we're afraid that, oh my God, we might not actually, the scales might be tilted in his favor in overcoming this low-level felony that no one's ever been charged with before. I mean, not that no one's ever been charged with 175-10. They have, but not for violating a federal crime. So there's this brand new application of New York Penal Code 175.10, which is itself a low-level felony, and then we're going to basically say we need to gag the former president of the United States, slap him with sanctions over and over and over and over and over again, and now threaten jail time. This isn't, but this, but the fact that the judge is this patient is what's so unusual. I got that's the unusual. That's the unusual part that CBS wants its audience to recognize. Wow, the remarkable patience. The remarkable patience. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
There's a challenge when it comes to putting a former president and a current candidate in jail.
Oh, is there? Is there?
I don't know how you would go about doing it. It's unprecedented.
Yeah, how would you go? That's a good question. And the fact that he's the candidate, obviously that raises the whole political speech context element. That bar, like, whoop, way higher. But yeah, just as far as just technically, how do you effectuate this thing? Like, what are you envisioning is going to happen? Are you saying that there's going to be security guards around the showers? They're going to be in the cell with him 24/7? Is that what you're envisioning here? Because I don't know how this would actually function. I'm not even getting it.
My guess is that also it feeds into what it is that many people have suggested. I think Leslie Sanchez, when she was on last week, mentioned that this is something that nothing would please him more. Or somebody told me that recently.
Yeah.
This is the, I like how when Trump is talking and they're talking over him. I don't know if this is, they say it's New York City moments ago. That's in the upper left corner here. They're saying New York City moments ago. They're not sharing that with you. No. Instead, they're doing the golf announcer as he steps onto the green and pulls out his putter. We imagine that he's lining up his shot here and trying to appreciate the break here. And the question is, how would that work with respect to throwing him in jail? Is that something that he actually wants? As he lines up his shot, and you can see him crouching there, trying to figure out exactly how the bank will break. What is happening? It's so weird. Like, he's talking softer because Trump is talking in the background, I guess. But we're not supposed to hear what Trump is saying. I don't know.
If it was on the air or somebody else who covers this, that martyring himself by being, sentenced to jail time would be essentially
Completely.
A fundraiser for him.
There's the politics, but then there's also just the business of the court.
But maybe, look, I assume that the most leftist 21st century parents are not really good at the role. So perhaps, I'm just speculating here, the idea that you're threatening Trump with throwing him in jail. Listen to what they're saying here. Just mull this over. Mull this over. They're threatening Trump with throwing him in prison, which he's already expressed, do it, to Judge in the E. Jean Carroll case. He's like, please do. I'd love it. So now Judge Merchan, aside from just putting aside the heavy presumption against constitutional validity of this gag order, let's just throw that aside. Let's just pretend that there was no constitution for a moment protecting free speech. Let's assume that there was Supreme Court precedent which actually supported this. Simply from a purely strategic perspective, assuming that your objective is to stop him from speaking about this case, and you know that he's thinking, hey, if I get thrown in prison for a couple of days, that is pretty awesome campaign help. And you're not looking, so why would you threaten him with a punishment that he thinks, this is like threatening your kids that if they don't pipe down, you're going to take them out for ice cream? I mean, strategically, I don't even understand what the court is thinking in issuing this or threatening that you may end up going to prison or we might end up because I guess they think that if we threaten over and over and over again, whatever sympathy he gets when we finally would throw him in prison is going to be anti-Trump sentiment, because it's like, wow, I can't believe that you still kept going. I can't believe you still kept going after you were warned and you got sanctioned. And that the public, I think there's an attempt to sort of try and sculpt the PR ramifications of throwing him in prison for contempt of violating the gag order, that, well, if we give him all these different chances and he still keeps stepping over the line, he becomes a habitual line stepper. In that case, perhaps the public will not be so sympathetic to him if we in fact throw him in prison. And if that is their estimation, if that's the estimation of various parties, I'll tell you right now, to me, it's a very foolish assumption. It's a very foolish assumption. You're basically threatening him with ice cream. That's what you're doing. You're threatening him with ice cream. It's like, okay, look, if you step over that line, I'm going to throw another $20 million into your campaign funds by putting you in jail for a day. Just saying, if you do it, I'm going to personally reach into my pocket, pull out $20 million and shove it into your campaign funds. Oh, and also help tilt the polling numbers even further in your favor. That's what I'm going to do. You better not ignore the gag order that I put on here that so many constitutional scholars say is completely unconstitutional. Because if you violate this unconstitutional gag order, I'm going to shove $20 million into your campaign funds. So watch out. Just telling you, just warning you, I mean, strategic. I don't even understand. What are you thinking? What is anyone here thinking? It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense at all. Oh, thank you for apprising me of that. Thank you. I hadn't considered that. Now I'll just jump on board. Now I'm just going to jump on board and try and get it removed. I'm just saying, like, strategically, this makes no, I don't understand what the thought process is. Nothing about this makes sense. Well, let me catch up here on a couple of things before I get back in. Reform comment. I have stitches again. The standard PPE yarmulke hard hats don't have enough coverage for mining. PPE yarmulke hard hats. Oh my god. This is why you have workers comp. 2 words: camo tracksuits make the reality. Camo. That's it. Camo tracksuits. That's it. Oh, that's totally it. Oh, that is totally it. Desert Storm camo or more like forest camo? Definitely thinking camo. Definitely thinking camo. I'm loving the camo idea. Maybe with a little menorah. I don't know. I am loving the camo idea, though. I was very torn about the color. I got my hat. It's a party on my head. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Because the bridge collapsed. What? I don't remember what I was talking about 10 minutes ago. But can I borrow your blade sharpener? It's a full moon, so we have a goat sacrifice tonight. Thanks. It's not a full moon. Okay. It's not. It's not. Quite the contrary. Actually, there's like no moon. So, boom on your joke that I'm taking very literally. But yeah, there's no goat sacrifices. There's no goat sacrifices. So proud of Joe. Don't forget to pin your gifts and go. You see, I keep forgetting to do that. This is why she reminds me. I'll throw my little thing here. And while I do that, let me just take care of this. To support my efforts to ungag Trump, go to https sendgo.com/ungag Trump. See, send that out there, go down, pin that message, go over to Rumble, throw it in here. Rumble folks supposedly got money. You guys supposedly got money. That's what they say, mad money. I don't know. Totally just made that up, but who knows? Maybe it's true. Breck Nichols says, Camo, I thought we were doing pastels. No. Oh, God, no. Oh, God, no. God, no. Oh, my God. Where'd you come up with that? Bragg charged Trump with election interference. That's not a crime. And how does that apply to New York? I don't get it. It's a good question. These are all good questions, Karen. All good questions. Even in Germany, they can't figure it out. I don't know. Can't figure it out here in New York either. Yet he asked if he could post articles, but we're not going to give an advance ruling. Yep. By the way, what he was caught in contempt of was an interview that he conducted on April 22nd. Yeah. Let's go to step in if Trump was jailed. I don't know. How would they step in? Someone needs to go running to him. What they don't understand is that the more they try and silence criticism against them, the more they look like a bunch of punks who need some humility. People are going to start talking more, not less. I don't know who you're talking about. I assume you're not trying to get me to elicit an opinion about anyone that I should not be eliciting an opinion. I should be. This is the thoughts of Jackals Terra Argentum. Good to see you, bro. Judges apparently never heard of. I never heard of Brer Rabbit. On second thought, if I had an NYPD hat that looks like I have a party on my hat, will it look like me? I partied with the NYPD. Young men, no. I say young men. Do the whole YMCA. YMCA. You can no. You're right. It's not full moon. It's the cult UFO. I'm seeing. Still not. Need to do the goat sacrifice. Still take me to heaven. Drink the Kool-Aid, my brother. Drink the Kool-Aid. Drink the Kool-Aid. Everything's gonna be just fine. Just fine. Just fine, Ed. Just fine. All right. Let's get back to my little.
And
CBS is busy informing me about the news.
Of jail. This is a man who is followed everywhere by Secret Service. And if he was to be put behind bars, presumably Secret Service.
They won't leave him alone. They're always following him around. He's like, shoo.
Service would have to be there as well. I don't even know how they would do it.
I think what you're seeing here is a person who flaunts the law and flaunts the rule of law. Yeah. And
that's not at all. That's not at all ignoring innocent until proven guilty.
Regardless of how he feels about the reasons why he is standing in that courtroom every single day, when a judge gives you, me, anybody, the President of the United States, an edict, no one is above it, no one is above the law or the
So much to say. I'm just going to say this guy's a moron. That's what I'll say. He's a moron. I don't even know who it is, but he's a moron.
Judge's rulings, and this individual feels that he is. And so that's why we are now. So let's go to CBS News campaign reporter and attorney, Katrina Kaufman, who's outside of the courthouse.
Well, let's get an attorney on here.
Katrina, you just heard us breaking down the update. Why don't you take us through it?
Okay, I'm understanding this a lot more now that I see him.
Good morning, Vlad. So,
That's Vlad.
Yes, a powerful moment in court when Judge Merchan made it clear to Trump that jail is really on the table if these gag order violations continue. He says it's clear that the $1,000 fines are just not working as a deterrent. And
surprise, surprise, everyone thought it would be. I don't even understand why he's saying that. I don't understand why he's saying that when the gag, he's punished today for what he said on April 22nd, but it's the second time he's punished. The first time he was punished was on April 29th.
he is very worried about the safety of this jury. He doesn't want them to feel fear during this process. Or
okay, let's pull up the judge's decision, because we need to look at what he deemed to be putting them in fear. This was what was putting them in fear, in the opinion of Judge Merchan. I didn't pull up the contempt order, but I should have. I can pull up. I know that Viva posted it, so I'm gonna pull up his. Where is it? My friend Viva. Scrolling. There it is. I don't like this version. Don't like this version. We can do better. I can do better. Boom. There it is. Defendant is charged with 34 counts of falsifying business records. Okay, we got that. I know that part. Wait, is this today's? Is this today's? This looks longer. No, this is today. Okay. All right. Here's the background. All right. I don't care about the background because we all know this. And then move for order to show cause, findings of fact. Well, okay. A hearing was conducted on April 23rd, 2024. By decision and order dated April 30th, this court found defendant in criminal contempt for willfully violating the expanded order on 9 separate occasions. He was ordered to pay a fine of $1,000 for each of the 9 violations. He was also directed to take down the social media post which violated the expanded order. In the meantime, on April 25th, 2024, before this court issued its order of April 30th, the people moved a third time by order to show cause to this court to find defendant in criminal contempt for additional alleged violations of the expanded order. If you're wondering why Bragg is doing this, in my personal opinion, I think he feels like if I get Trump in jail for one day, I will be lauded by the left as the hero, as Gotham's Dark Knight. I think that's what Alvin Bragg thinks. If I can convince Merchant, this is why he's bringing one order to show cause after another. He's like, if I can get him in jail for one day, the left will hold me out as their hero forever, and his political aspirations will go through the roof. That's his motivation. Judge Merchan, I think that he's doing his best to interpret the law in ways that I wholly disagree with. All right. He was ordered to pay a fine for 1,000 of each nominee. He was also okay. So in the meantime, April 25th, before his court issued its order of April 30th, people moved a third time by order of show cause for this court to find the defendant in criminal contempt for additional alleged violations of the expanded order. People seek a $1,000 fine for each of the 4 alleged violations pursuant to Judiciary Law 751. The defendant was properly served and answering papers were filed on April 29th. The plenary hearing, as required by law, was conducted on May 2nd. The court reserved decision. Findings of fact. This court has considered the respective arguments of both parties, the exhibits introduced into evidence of the hearing, and all submissions filed in support. As more fully explained in ADA Conroy's affirmation, the people alleged defendant violated the expanded order on 4 separate occasions as follows. 1, by virtue of a statement defendant made to the media in the hallway of 100 Center Street outside of the door of the Supreme Court of the State of New York, County of New York, Park 59. That's Judge Merchan's part, room 1530. That's where it's located. I know because that's where I served Judge Merchan. On April 22nd, approximately 12:40 p.m., after the court adjourned for the day, among other things, defendant said, and when are they going to look at the lies that Cohen did in the last trial? He got caught lying in the last trial. So he got caught lying, pure lying, and when are they going to look at that? Okay. By virtue of an interview the defendant gave on April 22nd at approximately 6 p.m. to a program called Just the News, No Noise, this is the one he ends up getting caught on. So, which is broadcast on a network called Real America Voice. Among other things, the defendant said, the judge is rushing the trial like crazy. Nobody's ever seen a thing go like this. That jury was picked so fast. 95% Democrats. The area is mostly all Democrat. You think of it as just a purely Democrat area. It's a very unfair situation, that I can tell you. This is the judge finds threatening the jury. I interpreted his order as restricting him from talking about individual jurors, not the jury as a whole. That was my interpretation, but apparently Judge Merchan thought something else when he wrote it. Then, number 3, by virtue of an interview, the defendant gave a program called Action News, which is an ABC News of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on April 23rd, which aired at approximately 5:56 p.m. Among other things, the defendant said, well, Matt Cohen is a convicted liar. He's got no credibility whatsoever. Matt Cohen was a convicted liar, but what he did is he did some pretty bad things. He did some pretty bad things. By virtue of a press event, defendant held at 49th Street, Park Avenue in Manhattan, April 25th, approximately 6:35 a.m. in response to a question about David Pecker's ongoing testimony in his trial. He's been very nice. David's been very nice. Nice guy. This is what they want to get him on. This is, listen, read this. This is what they want to get him on. That he said about David Pecker, he's been very nice. David's been very nice guy. That's something that Bragg is trying to have him held in contempt for. Seriously. What is happening here? He's been very nice. Wow. Hold in contempt. That's just scathing. The defendant does not dispute that he made the statements. Rather, he advances several defenses for his claim that his actions not constitute willful violation of expanded order, and they should therefore not be found in criminal contempt. He argues, for example, that he did not willfully violate the expanded order because the post constitute protected political speech made in response to attacks by Michael Cohen, and that his comments about the jury did not violate the order because he did not specifically reference any prospective juror or any juror in this criminal proceeding. That's what I said also. Finally, claims that his comments about David Pecker did not constitute a violation at all. Conclusions of law. The judiciary law authorizes the court to hold a party in contempt for willful disobedience of a court lawful mandate. People Memorandum of Law, April 15, 2024, quoting Town of Riverhead. This is to protect the dignity of the judicial system and to compel respect for its mandates. Pins and needles, needles and pins. A happy man is a man who brings. And to punish a contemptor for disobeying a court order, criminal contempt requires a showing willfulness on the part of the contemptor, from Madam McCormick, which must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Thus, for a court to make a finding of criminal contempt, the moving party must establish 1, the existence of lawful order expressing the unequivocal mandate, 2, a violation of the order, and 3, that's made with the knowledge that and is willful. A party may not challenge a court's order by violating it. That's why he asked for a ruling, a prior ruling that you said you're not going to give him. People's Memo of Law, April 15th, quoting United States versus Cutler. Indeed, a party may be held in contempt for violating an order later found to be unlawful. Wow. Wow. Now, YouTube did something similar to me. YouTube gave me a strike once where they were like, I was showing a Vice debate on Vice channel, the Vice channel, and I was stopping it like literally every 9 seconds to comment on it. It was 100% fair use, and at a certain point they started interrupting my stream, saying that I was restreaming Vice. And I kept going forward saying, no, there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing here. This is classic fair use. This is wrong. And when they gave me a strike, they said, even if we were wrong, you have a duty to listen and bend the knee to us. That didn't sit well with me. That doesn't mean it's not the law in New York that you have to bend the knee, even if the law is deemed the order is later found to be unlawful. But that doesn't sit well. That's the Seventh Circuit. Seventh Circuit? He's quoting the Seventh Circuit? The Seventh Circuit? Seventh Circuit is in the Midwest. He's quoting... In order to determine whether or not he can hold him in contempt for an unlawful order issued under state law in the state of New York, he's quoting the Seventh Circuit, a federal case from the Midwest. This is not even about free speech issues. This is just a contempt order issued under state law in the state of New York, and the justification for holding him in contempt for an order, even if it's later deemed unlawful, is that, well, the federal court in the Midwest said, what is happening here? I mean, seriously, what is happening? It's the Seventh Circuit. We're in the Second Circuit. You know how many circuits there are between us? There's like a long way. You can't throw a pass and reach the Seventh Circuit from here. No one could. Trust me. Trust me. Jeff George couldn't throw it that far. This is insanity. Sorry. Not insanity. The finding here. Oh, it's not. I mean, look. Judge Mershon is a very learned judge. 1,000%, and I mean that totally serious. He is. I think that from a legal perspective, this is an interesting read. Seventh Circuit. Seventh Circuit. Seventh. I guess the Ninth Circuit was too far away. Let's go with the Seventh Circuit. Seventh Circuit. It's not even a matter of like federal law. I don't know what's happening. How is this happening? Here's the point I want to make, okay? If he quoted some Supreme Court justice from Queens County, that would have, one would think, more influence.
more influence, because at least that's a New York judge, even though it's not binding on him at all. But you could see some other judge in New York, sometime in New York history, said this statement that indeed a party may be held in contempt for violating an order later found to be unlawful. At least he's interpreting New York law. This is a New York order issued by a judge from the state of New York under New York contempt law. It's really got nothing to do with free speech, because in theory, there could be an order. Let's say there's an order from a judge that you must appear before the court on date X. It's not a free speech issue. It's not anything having to do with the First Amendment. And failure to do so will have you held in contempt. Or here's one that's common. That happens all the time in New York. All the time, okay? Let's say someone issues a subpoena. A lawyer issues a subpoena. The recipient of the subpoena ignores the subpoena. Says you have to appear and answer questions. There's no First Amendment issues there. So now, that's it. You can have contempt orders in New York in countless the situations are only limited by your own imagination as to how you can have contempt orders. The notion that the premise that he's trying to establish here is that someone can be held in contempt under New York law, even if the order is later held to be unlawful. Are there no times that a judge in New York has ever issued such a statement? That we have to go out to the Midwest and the federal court in the Midwest and try to come up with some sort of statement to support this notion? I don't understand. Is that how foreign it is in New York to come up with this concept? That you have to basically go reaching out to somewhere in Iowa? Some federal court in Iowa and just say, hey, oh, really? Some judge in Iowa said this? I don't understand this. Well, what is happening here? Someone explain this to me, because everything I understand about law is getting completely baffled by what I'm reading here. I don't understand it. This makes no sense to me. It's just. Adjudication contempt occurs at a plenary hearing with due process of law, including notice, written charges, assistance of counsel, compulsory processes for production of evidence, and an opportunity to the accused to confront witnesses against him. All right, there we're quoting 22 NYCRR. That's New York Court Rules and Regulations. Okay. A plenary hearing as required by law was conducted on May 2nd, 2024. Decision. The court cannot find beyond a reasonable doubt defendant statements referenced in Exhibits E and G were not protected political speech made in response to political attacks by Michael Cohen. Likewise, this court cannot find beyond a reasonable doubt the defendant's statement referenced in Exhibit H constitute a violation of the expanded order. To be sure, this court understands people's argument as it pertains to Exhibit and agrees that often seemingly innocuous or even complimentary words. This is where the one where he said David Pecker is nice guy, did well, good guy. To be sure, this court understands people's arguments as it pertains to this exhibit and agrees that often seemingly innocuous or even complimentary words and phrases can in truth conceal a more nefarious purpose, such as to threaten, harass, or intimidate. However, context, facial expressions, emphasis, and even cadence are critical in reaching such determination. Under the circumstances here, the court cannot find beyond a reasonable doubt that the statement in question constitutes a veiled threat to Mr. Pecker or to other witnesses. Okay. Turning to the statement referenced in People's Exhibit F, this court finds that the people have established the elements of criminal contempt beyond a reasonable doubt. This court's expanded order is lawful and unambiguous. Well, it seemed ambiguous to the court finds it to be unambiguous. The defendant violated this order making public statements about the jury and how it was selected. In doing so, the defendant not only called into question the integrity and therefore legitimacy of these proceedings. I thought he's allowed to do that. I thought he was allowed to do that. But again, raised the specter of fear and safety of the jurors and their loved ones. I don't see that at all. I don't even understand I don't understand how he reads that in here. Again, this is
Such concerns undoubtedly threaten to interfere with the fair administration of justice and constitute direct attack of the rule of law, expanded orders, page 3. It remains this court's fundamental responsibility to protect the decency of the criminal process and to control disruptive influences in the courtroom based on Shepard v. Maxwell. So much wrong with this ruling. It's such a flawed ruling. Shepard v. Maxwell. Shepard v. Maxwell, which was all about we're going to protect. In case you haven't heard me mention Shepard v. Maxwell in the last 4 minutes, that was a case where a criminal defendant was stripped of his ability to have a fair trial, and the court literally said that his constitutional right to a fair trial was deprived based on someone's First Amendment, based on the media's first abuse of the First Amendment. So now Shepard v. Maxwell is being... I think the authors of Shepard v. Maxwell would be turning in their graves if they read this. I really do. That's my opinion. I think they would be turning in their graves if they read the way Shepard v. Maxwell is, in my opinion, being bastardized into being something completely other than what it means. I was talking with Ron Baruti about this earlier today. I was like, if you read these Supreme Court decisions, any one of them, or one right after the other, and I tell you, these are the Supreme Court decisions which lead a court to believe that it has a right to gag a criminal defendant, you would be astonished, because every one of them is basically saying we have to protect defendants. So there you go. And somehow they've been completely... to me, it's a complete perversion of those Supreme Court decisions, like an utter perversion. And when I say perversion, I mean like literally the term perversion is you take something and twist it to mean the exact opposite of what it means. And that's what I feel like happened here. I think the DC Circuit Court did that, and I think that these gag orders are doing the precise same thing. It's complete perversion of Supreme Court precedent. As stated in his decision on April 30th, criminal contempt is punishable by a fine not exceeding $1,000, by jail not exceeding 30 days, or by both in discretion of the court. Judiciary Law 751. The judiciary law permits this punishment to protect the dignity of the judicial system and to compel respect for its mandates, and to punish a contender for disobeying a court order. Because the offensive statement was made prior to the court's decision on April 30th, and because the people are seeking only a monetary fine, the court will once again fine the defendant $1,000. However, because this is now the 10th time that this court has found the defendant in criminal contempt spanning 3 separate motions, it is apparent that monetary fines have not and will not suffice to deter the defendant from violating this court's lawful orders. Therefore, defendant is hereby put on notice that if appropriate and warranted, future violations of its lawful orders will be punishable by incarceration. That's when he says this, the way it's worded is, when he says will be punishable by incarceration, that's implying there will be jail if there's another violation. He doesn't say may. He says will. That's my read. I could be misreading it, because apparently I sometimes misread Judge Mershon orders, because I didn't understand them to mean... I thought it meant individual jurors the same way his counsel read it, so I could be misreading it. But I read the word will here as basically saying, I'm going to throw you in jail if this happens again. That's how I read this. How else can you read this? Will be punishable. Defendant pay a $1,000 fine for his violation. The defending statement has been posted in the defendant's True Social account. It's been removed by 2:15 p.m. Monday. Wow. He's going to literally put $20 million in his account. Banana bread. Can you get a good deal on aluminum foil beanies emblazoned with the following: no extra charge for optional red ball tip, springy antenna, and rainbow color propeller on lots of 100K or more. What's your opinion? Aluminum foil beanies emblazoned with the following. Look, if I can't get you a good deal, they're gonna like revoke my J card, right? So no extra charge for optional red bill. You probably mean red bill tip, springy antenna, and rainbow color propeller on lots of 100K. I'm gonna give you another one because that was so funny. Thank you for the very, very generous tip there, Banana Bread. That was pretty good. Ed says, you're right, it's not full moon, it's the cult UFO. Oh, okay. I think I got that earlier. Sorry I didn't get to you earlier, Banana Bread. Apparently you sent that a long time ago and I totally didn't see it. I got very entranced by what I was doing. So I apologize that I said it. I'm going to give you one more just because I feel bad that I made you wait so long. Trump said word junior is all it took. I don't know what that means. What word? I'm not sure what. Notice the judge not defending Cohen anymore. It is interesting. You think it's because of my motion? You think so? You think it's because of my motion? Maybe it's my motion. I wonder if it's my motion. I did notice that. My lawyer, or Good Lawgic's lawyer, was saying that he thinks that he might peel back some of the order, so this way they don't have to make a decision. Could be. Most laws and rules can only be challenged with standing, which may require a violation of law first. It's difficult to get standing without it. Yeah. If illegal or unconstitutional, it would happen, no? I don't know what you mean, Purple Pros. I'm not sure what that means. Sorry. That is implied, right? That is implied. He's like, even if my order's a little sus, you still gotta follow it because the Seventh Circuit says so. That's what it implies to me. That's what I think there's a great point that I really didn't hit on that you are JC. Which is, yeah. When he says this part right here, indeed a party may be held in contempt for violating an order later found to be unlawful. Maybe he's reading my motion. I mean, he got served with it. He's seen my papers. This was after I'd forwarded my papers on to the OCA, and my lawyer kicked in his papers. Maybe. This is a good question. That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. Rosa Parks needed standing. That's true. This is interesting. This is just such an astonishing sentence for a judge to write. And the last two words here, Seventh Circuit, are what make it so astonishing. Wow. Just wow. How does this apply to New York state law? How does something from the Seventh Circuit apply to New York? How? Just explain to me how. How is this influential in interpreting New York state law? How? Only word Trump had to say was jurors. Oh yeah, jurors. Oh, that's what you said. You said junior. Yeah. All right. let's get back to this report here. This insight. I can't deprive you of the insight.
Fear for their loved ones, for that matter, and he feels like he really has a duty to protect the legitimacy of this trial and the criminal justice process. So I think you were speaking about it, but the gag order violation that he found Trump in contempt for was the one about the jury. And it was very clear the other day during the hearing that he was extremely concerned about that one. He really, really wants to protect this jury.
But listen, we talked about this before. Jail time, I know it's an option on paper, and even the judge talks about
touchdown on Reddit, on paper.
How much he realizes that this would be a very serious thing to do, but also extremely disruptive. How realistic is it that a former president would wind up with jail time?
How realistic is it? I mean, I guess from what the judge is saying, it is realistic at this point. He does say that the prosecution has to ask for it. He says if it's requested, but obviously it will be very complicated. There's Secret Service. The judge says that he is worried about that, but you know, he is also limited in what he can do for these gag orders. It's either the $1,000 monetary fine or jail.
Judge says in that hearing, Katrina, the judge said to Mr. Trump, your continued willful violations of this court's lawful order constitute a direct attack on the rule of law. Can you just explain it to just people who are watching?
Explain it to us, because we're all very confused. So we need your enlightenment.
If this were anybody else.
He keeps coming back to this. If this was anybody else. And I want you to know something. This is the part that's really genuinely hilarious. This dude here genuinely believes this. He genuinely believes this. That I cannot stress to you enough the culture here in New York. I need to spend a few minutes here. And share with you all something I referenced in Locals, which is a 45-minute conversation I had with a cameraman who works for Daily Mail, which is fairly centrist, if not in some ways right-leaning compared to most media. I had a 45-minute discussion with this gentleman. Nice guy. He said he's a 62-year-old black man. Intelligent guy. And I had a very long talk with him, and I was basically trying to pitch to him. I was like, I just want to share with you here. I was looking for Right Side Broadcasting News. This is after I'd served in person the district attorney's office. I went down after I appeared in First Department Courthouse on Madison Avenue. I took a train a few stops down to the criminal courthouse so that I could serve the district attorney in person, because I hadn't seen his email confirming that he would accept e-service, even though he had already sent it. But anyway, so I went down to the courthouse there. When I came out across the street, there's the whole pit of, and I call it a pit, I don't know if they even call it that, but it's basically a lineup across the street of various media cameras who are waiting for something to happen. They sit there for hours a day with nothing happening. They just park there from probably like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. And most of the time they're just sitting there. The camera crew and other producers or whatever they are all sitting around in their own little area that they carton off for Fox News, Channel 11 News, NBC, CBS, and and she's standing in one of those areas there. And you'll see they sort of set up usually a little podium for the face to like her face here to stand up on, and this is directly across the street from the courthouse, 100 Center Street, where the criminal courthouse is located. So, and it's really funny to see one reporter standing there and 20 feet away, a different reporter, and each of them were talking to their camera people the way she's talking to these folks here. And the reason I brought this up is because with the mindset of this guy right here, this is a classic New York mindset. With all the stuff that you think that they know that they're full of garbage on, they really don't. They genuinely believe that they're the good people, that they're looking here to protect the world. That is how they view themselves. You should never think that they think of themselves as being evil. Completely the opposite. They genuinely believe that you are either evil or a fool. That there's one or two possibilities. You're either evil, like some, the classic stereotypical racist, or you're just an idiot who's been hoodwinked by Trump, which I think they think the vast majority of MAGA is. Just morons who are not as intelligent or as enlightened as they are, who have been hoodwinked by Trump or and basically fell under his spell. That is genuinely how they look at you. And that he has a real darkness to him, and that he is a genuine threat to the country. Never, you can't pretend that they don't believe that, because they really do. I've spoken to them. They genuinely believe. And this gentleman who I spoke with today, like I said, older black man, really nice guy, really smart guy. And I told him that I am suing Judge Merchan to try and overturn the gag order. And he was intrigued by this. And I was telling him, you should really pass this story along. I think Daily Mail might be interested in it. It's already been covered in the About Times. It's sort of story that Daily Mail, I've been looking here for Right Side Broadcasting News. I didn't see them. I think that they might be interested in it. And he said he would pass it along, and he asked me for more details. And I started explaining to him. He asked me first, where my standing comes from. And I explained to him my standing. And at a certain point, and I explained to him the rationale as to why this gag order is unconstitutional and that they never should have had a balancing test. And I had to walk him through how the Supreme Court has interpreted different balancing tests. He's not very familiar with the law, even though he covers a lot of trials. And he's talking to me philosophically, and he's like, don't you think it's important to silence someone from spreading continual lies that put people in danger? Like, this is the mindset that he had, that he's spreading one lie after another, and that these lies are literally putting people in danger. And that makes him, like, in his mind, like a menace to humanity. This is, and he's not saying that out of anger, out of spite. He's like, this is a real problem. Like, what should we do about someone who's a menace to society? Because I was obviously advocating for free speech and the importance of free speech and how the founders recognize the value of free speech. I gave him a whole long thing about how the purpose of free speech, and I told him, look, I'm Jewish, and I still think that the decision that the Supreme Court made to allow the Yahtzees to go running out in Skokie and do their rally was 100% the right decision. I said, because while in that group there's going to be a certain percentage who are completely off their rocker, a lot of the people who are following them are believing it, but they're not filled with a natural enmity. They're filled with misinformation. And if you restrict them from being able to speak their minds, and you just force them under threat of incarceration or some other thing to remain silent, you're never going to engage them in dialogue like we're having right here and now and be able to convince them as to how flawed their perspectives are. So instead, what do you accomplish? They still have the same hate, and behind closed doors, they're sharing the same hate, and they never have an opportunity to engage in dialogue which might make them recognize how flawed their positions are. And that's why the founders showed such wisdom in saying that we need to protect free speech, not for the saints of the world, but particularly the terrible people of the world. You wouldn't need a free speech law for people who are saying nice things all the time, people who are spreading genuine, love and happiness. Well, I mean, today's form of spreading love and happiness, maybe. But the point is that, people who are kind to everyone, you probably wouldn't need to have free speech laws to protect them. It's specifically the reason they did that is so that we can clash heads
and come to greater understanding of things. And he started understanding what I was saying. And he's like, but what do you do about a situation like this? Like, he's lying. I said, give me an example where you think he's flat out lying. So he said, well, in the whole Judge Engeron case, that he said that his clerk was Chuck Schumer's girlfriend. And that's just not true. So I said, okay, so he told a lie. So let's assume that you're correct. He's like, no, don't assume. I am correct. She's definitely not his girlfriend. And that's what he said. And that ratchets up hate against her. So he's lying to ratchet up hate against her. Shouldn't we be concerned about the impact of that? And I said, I don't think so. I don't think that. And the reason we had, and I started explaining to him Brandenburg and how we have to allow free speech. And even if someone is wrong, because you can't start deciding who's telling the truth and who's lying. You can't flesh out the possibility to expose corruption. If anytime someone disagrees with the narrative that's being shared, that all of a sudden we're going to say, we're going to clamp your mouth shut. I said, I want you to understand, this has never happened, that a criminal defendant has been silenced from what he can say outside of the courtroom. Inside the courtroom, the court has their rules. It's their domain. Fine. You can do that. That's the same way you can't just go wherever you want and break their rules. In the courthouse, you have to follow their rules too. But outside the courtroom, to talk about a trial where he's a criminal defendant, explain how he feels that this is a corrupt process, that he prohibited from saying that. So he's like, but what about the danger? And I said, okay, I love that question. You're bringing up the John Gotti question, right? Let's think about this scenario. You have a mob boss who can basically hint to his cohorts, hey, that they want to whack some guy. This is a witness or whatever, and that the mob boss wants him removed. Al Capone, John Gotti, whoever you want to mention. We have gag orders that stop them from speaking. And it makes sense. He's like, but that doesn't fit with your whole balancing between one constitutional right and another that you keep talking about. I said, that's true. But what you need to understand is that speech, which the mob boss is engaging in, that we're gagging him, stopping him from saying, is already illegal speech. He's like, what do you mean? I said, even if there was no gag, the speech is illegal. So he's like, how? So I said, when he makes a statement that is hinting to one of his cohorts to physically harm somebody, that is conspiracy. That is his part in conspiracy to engage in attempted murder or other bodily harm. So the speech itself, when he's saying it, even if he says it innocuously, or he does it by rubbing his nose or tugging on his tie or whatever it is while he mentions a name, that's already illegal. We might not realize it while he's giving this speech, but the reason it's illegal is because it's a conspiracy. There's a meeting of the minds between the speaker, the mob boss, and the intended audience, which is one person or 5 people, or maybe a group of 20 people who understand what it means. But that speech itself is already illegal. He's committing a crime when he says it. We just don't realize he's committing it. So we say, you know what? We want to protect, since it's illegal speech anyway, we're going to gag him from talking about this trial because we think that there's a high likelihood he's going to engage in legal speech because the very thing he's charged with is engaging in that type of legal speech all over the place. So we're gagging him for the purposes of stopping him from engaging in illegal speech that we have strong reason to believe that that's the type of language that he engages in. But Trump's speech here, none of it, nothing he's ever said, has anyone said is illegal. Whether it was the January 6th speech or whatever, anything he said, there's no individual statement that was directed at an individual that they would pick it up and they would take that speech and they would act upon it to harm some third party, to harass inappropriately, to spew racist stuff, which technically would be legal. Anyone tell him that. And I said, if we allow this to happen here, he's the tip of the spear. This has never happened before. And if this happens here because he has too big of a following, too rabid of a following, it's going to happen the next time with someone smaller. He's like, you don't know that. I said, of course I know that. I can prove it to you. He's like, why would you think anyone's going to rely on this decision? It's just a Supreme Court justice decision. Really? So I said, really? Think about this for a second, my friend. He relied on Judge Engoron's decision to support his. Now it's going to go up to the First Department. It's being appealed. First Department's going to be ruling on my case. People are going to say, oh, wow, First Department supports it. So why would you think this wouldn't happen in other jurisdictions? What was the logic that Judge Merchant and Judge Engoron used? They said, oh, the D.C. Circuit Court said it's okay. So D.C. Circuit Court says it's okay in Washington. Why shouldn't it be okay here in New York? So if it's good here in New York, the next thing you know, it can be good in Missouri. It can be good in California. It can be good anywhere. They'll say, oh, just like it applied there, it applies here. That's how law always invariably evolves. But it's not just going to evolve with Donald Trump. That's my concern. That's my grave fear here. It's going to evolve to hurt you and me. I'm worrying about your grandkids and my grandkids. Because today it's against Trump. But then the audience gets smaller and smaller. And the wheel spins around. Imagine this, if you will. Imagine you have some ambitious DOJ from the Midwest who says, you know how I'm going to make a name for myself? I'm going to bring charges against Barack Obama. He's like, that would never happen. So I said, why? That's what you think today. He says, I'm going to bring charges against Barack Obama, and then if he says anything about it, I'm going to get him gagged, because let's face it, he's got a very, very, very strong audience, a massive audience, which strongly supports him. We can anticipate that there's going to be all sorts of terrible things, and they're almost you would be positive that in that scenario, even if Barack Obama said nothing, tons of people would be coming up there cursing out the DOJ, cursing out the district attorney or the member of the Justice Department who had the audacity to bring charges against Barack Obama. And then imagine a judge says, hey, you know what? The gag order was legal over there against Trump in New York in a criminal defense case. Legal here too. We have to protect the sanctity of our courtroom. Why would that not happen? Why would that not happen? When I said this, his face turned white. He looked pale. He looked sickly when I said this to him. I said, when I mentioned the idea of charges being brought against Barack Obama, he looked like he was going to throw up. So he's like, okay, I'm starting to see. I said, look, is it going to happen to Barack individually? I don't, seems unlikely. But, the same thing could happen to Tucker Carlson. The same thing could happen to Bill Maher. The same thing could happen to anyone. It could happen to AOC. It could happen to anyone. There's no way to know who's going to be the next victim. And that's what I'm trying to say. It could happen to me because I have a stupid channel. Not that you guys are stupid. You guys are much smarter than me. I'm saying, I have enough of an audience that they would, they're going to say, we get all these people calling in here saying they're not in a cult, type of cult. But even when I was finished with him, he's like, at the end of the day, we have to make sure we keep people safe. And even if he's not talking to people directly, we know it's going to have that impact. So I said, how do you even know it's him having that impact? Do you know it's him having that impact? Think about it. Think about this for a second. Kyle Rittenhouse, he got death threats. He goes, we know that there's a dog whistle. This is the thing the left always loves, the dog whistle. Dog whistle that I never hear. I don't know if you ever hear a dog whistle. I'm not a dog, so I don't hear the whistles. That's my best speculation. And this guy was really nice and philosophical and intelligent, and he's having a healthy dialogue with me. And I was like, who was giving the dog whistle for people to attack Kyle Rittenhouse and harass him? Who was giving the dog whistle for people to threaten Derek Chauvin's life? Because I don't think we can identify anyone. I think we look at the events and we say, oh, the events riled up a lot of folks. And when you have a lot of folks riled up, a certain percentage of them are going to act like lunatics.
That's just what's going to happen. So why are you thinking that this is because Trump says something, sends out a tweet in all caps, that all of a sudden that's what makes someone act like a jerk, rather than the fact that in both camps there is a certain percentage of people who are actually jerks. When they hear news about something, even without a dog whistle from the particular individual is affected, they're just going to react. And the evidence is the fact that people are reacting against Derek Chauvin, people are reacting against Kyle Rittenhouse, people are reacting against Justice Kavanaugh. Anyway, so that was my dialogue with this guy here. But the reason I brought this up is because his mindset is exactly like this guy. That Trump is getting away with it and that he's a danger and that we really need to stop him. And they're not saying this because he's not saying because he's politically motivated. He's just been convinced of it by talking heads like this guy. And for all I know, this talking head over here was convinced of it by this woman or by their boss, by some other person that they look up to and admire and respect their opinion. So it ends up being like this domino of fools who fall in line and say, "Oh my gosh, this is why that anyone who follows after Trump must be either a moron or evil, genuinely evil." But it's like millions of morons and evil people, and that they're here to save the world. That's their mindset. That they're really trying to save the world and save America. And they refer to it as saving democracy because saving America is a little bit too patriotic. So to save democracy, which I don't know what that means, but that's where they're coming from. So that's why when you're engaging them, if you want to have any success in engaging them, you need to understand that they look at themselves as if they're on the right side of history. They're positive that they're on the right side of history. And completely unwilling to even consider the fact that they're 100% in the wrong. 100% in the wrong. On 97% of all issues. Which is like saying that it works 97%, 100% of the time. I like lamp. We need to protect the legitimacy of the court, so we have to suppress political speech saying the court is a bunch of clowns. Yep. And that's, by the way, that sort of speech is exactly what SCOTUS says. You cannot suppress that. That's part of the issue here. That's part of the problem that Judge Merchant has with this decision. Like, actually, like, surviving an appeal. It's like, what? No. The Supreme Court has expressly said that you can criticize the corruption of a court. Shepard v. Maxwell, the case he's citing, says that. The very case he's citing says that the purpose of having a media and First Amendment protections is so that the court can have their feet held to their fire to call out corruption. Shepard v. Maxwell. And that's actually the point of Shepard v. Maxwell, rather than the limited thing is... that Merchant uses it for. No matter how illegal, corrupt, and unconstitutional this trial is, they don't care. They must get a felony conviction before the election. Reversed on appeal doesn't matter. Yeah, maybe. I don't know, Stephen. Could be. I only think that helps Trump. I don't think any of this hurts him politically. So you're saying the Seventh Circuit is the mustard of circuits? No, that's not what I'm saying. I wasn't saying the same thing. No, Aaron. No, let me clarify in case anyone... I don't know if you're saying this as a joke. I know you're saying it as a joke because of yesterday's whole mustard thing. But my point is, when you're looking for guidance for what governs you, the first thing you do is you look up the chain. What does my boss court say? Then you look to other peers. What do other courts in my domain say? What do other departments say? What does the second department say? What does the third department say? What does the first department say? First, he looks to the Court of Appeals. When Justice Merchant or any judge in New York is looking for governing case law first thing that he would do, since he's in Manhattan, is go to the Court of Appeals, because that's where all New York judges are supposed to look first. Then you look to the First Department, which is, since he's in Manhattan and that's part of the First Department, any rulings from them is mandatory that he follows that. Then he looks to the other three departments, the second, third, and fourth departments, which are the appellate courts from outside of Manhattan and the Bronx. So the second department covers the rest of New York City, third and fourth department cover the rest of New York State, and he can look to them for influential. Another source of influential would be, you need to look to the Supreme Court of the United States, that's governing on him also. Then he can look to the Second Circuit, which is the circuit court that incorporates New York and the Northeast region over here. That is influential. That's not something he must follow, but it's influential in Judge Merchant's decisions. Now, if you're trying to figure out how to interpret a New York State statute, and you've exhausted all of these possibilities, you might go to a district court, like the Southern District of New York, Eastern District of New York, come to some decision from them. Southern District of New York is Manhattan here. You might come to something influential there, and some interpretation they had of New York State law. If you don't have that, then you start looking around to other courthouses. You look within your own courthouse. Say, hey, what happened when another judge in New York County, my courthouse, this building here, had something similar like this? Or if not this very courthouse, one of the other courthouses in the area, because frankly, there's several courthouses in downtown New York, which are all considered same level. Maybe in criminal court, maybe it's in civil court where there was a contempt issue. You can look to other counties. There's 64 counties. Each of them have countless judges and decisions that they issued, because they're all interpreting New York State statute, which is what he's trying. This is New York State order under New York State statute. So you say, oh, okay, maybe one of these people, out of the literally hundreds of thousands of decisions, if not millions of decisions that this group has collectively put out over the last 240 years, it's probably over 1 million. If you consider all the decisions of all those judges for 240 years, I'm just guessing that it could be over 1 million. And find one of them to basically say, you know what, a contempt order is still valid even if the order is later deemed to be unlawful. But because you're interpreting New York State law. That's what he's doing here. Instead, he's like, oh, you know how I know this? Because there's a judge out in Western District, Kentucky, that said this. You're like, in a federal case. You're like, what does that have to do with interpreting a New York State statute? How does that have anything to do with understanding? Why don't you quote something that you saw from Poland? If someone in Poland, a decision from Poland is equally relevant in interpreting New York State law to a Seventh Circuit decision. It's like, oh yeah, you know what? When I was visiting in the Cayman Islands there, I read this decision on Cayman law. Hey, seriously, why don't you go to the Code of Hammurabi? Go to the Code of Hammurabi and say, you know, back in the Middle East, they came up with they had this concept that you can hold someone in contempt even if the order is unlawful because there's a need to bend the knee. Oh, I mean, yeah, you know what? You can Sophocles once wrote, like, what? What is happening here? That's why I'm saying it makes no sense to interpret New York State law based on what somebody in Kentucky said about contempt orders. Because contempt orders there are governed under a whole different set of rules. A whole other set of rules. That's state by state. Every state has their own contempt rules. So just because their contempt rules there are interpreted a certain way, even after unlawful, what does that have to do with interpreting a New York State statute? Nothing. Nothing. It's just, this is a quote I like, so I'm throwing it in here. It's unbelievable. His college is protesting a long-time confusion institutions pumping out graduates to fill positions with immunity and power. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Seventh Circuit citation, also a civil case. I don't know. I didn't bother looking up. I guess from the title, it sounds like it's a civil case, right? It sounds like it's a civil case, right? Because there's no people of. It was Sheeran v. Sheehan or something. Plug the hell out of your lawyer being on with you tomorrow on all your socials. I think it's going to be a great show. I will. Thank you. Thank you, Jake from State Farm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to having Ron on here. Ron Baruti. All right. I think it's already midnight, so I should share with you a status. I just want to give a quick thing here. This is a little update here from Inner City Press. This is literally a 2-minute video just so you can get a background as to what happened today besides the contempt order. So it gets a little bit, so we get caught up on that. Just instead of going through his whole timeline. It seems like today was relatively...
Okay, here we are, Matthew.
I've met this guy. I like this guy. He's a really good person, a smart guy, smart attorney, very dedicated towards maintaining justice. I highly recommend you follow Inner City Press and Matthew.
Absolutely, Inner City Press. Yes, yet another day of the Trump trial. Today, Monday, May 6th, 2024. Now, there was a lot of custodial witnesses today, a lot of going over the business records, and we knew it had to be done, but it was done with 2 witnesses and virtually all day. But before Jeff McConney took the stand, Judge Merchan dropped the hammer. He said, I have a ruling on contempt. Mr. Trump, if you continue to violate, I will have no choice but to jail you. I don't want to do it, but I have to defend the dignity of the court, and you may be jailed. So I'm sure that's big news. Could he do it? Would he do it? What would it mean for the trial? At day's end, the prosecutors said they have only about 2 more weeks. That is to say, 2 weeks from today, they might close their case. What would the defense case be? How long would closings be? I don't know, but there's an estimate. Now, Jeff McConney, the longtime, recently retired comptroller, senior vice president of the Trump Organization, described his supervision of the accounting team. And I guess you could say he said, yes, they logged these things in at their business expenses. And then came Deb Tarasoff, the actual accounts payable. And they went over the exact same ground, except that they got in the Capital One checks. Capital One was at the time President Trump's, I guess, personal bank. For what it's worth, Capital One is now seeking federal approvals for a ill-considered or anti-competitive merger with Discovery. But I digress. Tarasoff went over the same ground. Now, the government wants in this custodial witness from Friday. Once again, they've got more tweets and more truths that they want in, but they say they have another witness that they'll deal with tomorrow, and we'll be there. You can almost say there's something of a countdown, since with Wednesdays off and there's a Friday off in there, I think we're down to 6 more days of government case. So, T-6. Inner City Press, we continue.
I highly recommend you, if you're on X, that you follow Inner City Press and consider subscribing to his Substack. Like I said, smart guy. He's a lawyer and a journalist, and he used to cover the UN. His UN press pass was revoked a couple of years ago without any explanation as to why, but probably for being too based. So I cannot endorse Inner City Press anymore strongly. I'm a big fan of this gentleman. He's a good guy. Hard worker, smart guy, and based. So,
okay, here we are.
So what else could you want? Okay, let me give you my update now. Oh, let me make sure I didn't miss anything here. Are we still good here? I'll check my locals chat also before I get into this. I'm good here. Check locals. We're doing locals. Grifty says, group photo diggers now that Joe is set on camo. You bastard. You bastard. Now that Joe's set on camo, here's a group photo of the diggers. Oh my God. What is happening here? I don't know what's going on. Okay. Again, I'm going to be giving you facts. You can draw your own conclusions. I'm simply giving you facts. Here are the facts. Okay? I'll tell you my day, and I'll give you a bit of Ron Baruti's day. Okay? I got to court at 10 to 10. When I got to court, I filed the papers. They said, you don't have to file hard copies. It can be e-filed. I said, really? Even though it's a digital submission? They said, yeah. But now that you're here, we'll take them. I said, okay. So they stamped him. Ron told me that he was delayed and wasn't going to get there till a few minutes later. I didn't end up even seeing him I said, what's with my oral argument? They said, oral argument, now that we got your papers, we'll give you a date. I had e-filed the papers before I went to bed last night. Ron had e-filed his papers on behalf of Good Lawgic. And then I said to the clerk, I didn't include an affidavit of service. He's like, you're going to need to re-upload it with an affidavit of service. So I said, okay, fine. I'll re-upload it with an affidavit of service. I'll get that done later today. I had already emailed it to the ADA and the OCA. I asked them for permission to accept email as being part of my service. I'm not going to go over that I covered that in locals as to the whole back and forth on that. It turns out they both agreed to it. I didn't see the one from the ADA until I had already gone down to the courthouse. So I went down to the ADA's office, which is in the same building as Trump's trial, 100 Center Street. And I served the ADA personally, and I figured my OCA service was already covered. We're good to go. Okay. After I served them, I came out, was loitering around that media pit, and that's when I had that long conversation with that black gentleman, that philosophical discussion about my application under Article 78. And then basically worked my way back to my car, drove back to New York, drove back home on my way there, had a nice little local show, walked everyone through everything that had happened. And the other thing that they told me was that they're going to give me a date for the return date. I was like, so I'm not arguing today. They're like, no, you're not arguing today. I said, even though there's an motion? Yeah, even though there's a motion, you're not arguing today. So I said, okay, fine. They're going to tell me when I'm coming back. I said, I should expect that to be soon. They said, yeah, it should be relatively soon. So I hope so, because this is an emergency application. I really need to get in before the court. After I did that, I see that my papers were rejected by the court. And I was like, I'm getting tired of this. I've never had any court that's like just constantly overseeing and basically reading through every one of my papers and seeing what are we accepting, what are we rejecting. Normally it just comes in and it just gets filed. And if the papers are good, your judge will be happy with them. If they're not, the judge will yell at you. But it's sort of the duty's on you. There's no intermediary here who's sitting here deciding, do I like these papers or not? This is not something that I'm very familiar with. I don't know if this is something that happens in the first department when it goes into NICEF. They did not give me a NICEF number. They don't, I mean, I have a docket number, but NICEF is an acronym, NYS, as in New York State, CEF, Court Electronic Filing. So everyone just refers to it as NICEF. NYS CEF. And there's a login that you have, and when you log into it, they tell you what your cases are. And you can file directly to your case when you have a NICEF number. The other thing about NICEF is anyone can click on anything can search for anything that's found in the NICEF system and click on any filing there. It doesn't really work as well with the whole criminal justice system, which is something I covered months ago before this trial commenced, when I was assessing why we couldn't find any records there. But it does work for the appellate department. And this is not a criminal matter, it's a civil matter. There's no reason I should not have a NICEF number. When I appeared on April 16th, before I appeared, they said everything has to be on digital submission. Digital submission is the other option when there's no NICEF number. There's no NICEF portal. And I've walked the audience through, I'm not going to do it again, but I've walked them through how you would upload something into NICEF. And it just automatically goes, you filing something, it automatically gets attached to your docket number, your index number. In the appellate court, it's called docket number. In the Supreme Court, it's called index number. So it automatically get attached to the docket number, which in my case, the docket number is 2024-02457. So I would log in and they would ask me what docket I want to file up to. And then they ask me what documents I want to submit. And then you attach your documents. and they click, you review it, and then do you want to submit? And then boom, and right away, notification would go out to my adversaries, and that's considered my service on them. So that this way they have a copy of my papers, and they can just click on it. Anyone can, and anyone who knows my docket number can look it up on the New York State Computer Court Electronic Filing System and see all the records that are filed there. So that's the three main advantages of having a NYSEF number. One, I just filed straight there. I don't have to worry about some clerk looking at it and deciding whether or not it suits his fancy. Two, it's considered service on my adversaries. I don't have to worry about whether or not they got my papers. It's automatically considered as if they got them because they get a notification. NYSEF automatically will kick out a notification to anyone who's listed as an attorney of record on that particular case. And three is that the public is able to access those records. If you're not in NYSEF, you're in digital submission. Digital submission is basically like a massive Dropbox for anyone who has any filing anywhere in the court. Which you put your index number on it so people can find it, so that it goes to the right, goes to the right place. But no one from the public can access it. The only one who can access it is the clerk. No one else can see this at all. So only the clerk gets it. And then it never makes it to the public, even if it gets approved. It's like, okay, this is approved. It's like no one can ever see it. It's not considered service. And that's why after I appeared on April 16th, I said, okay, now that I've paid for my index number and everything's been approved, my papers are all acceptable, and I'm coming back here on May 6th, and am I getting a NYSEF number? And they said, yes, but you still need to upload one thing. So I said, okay, fine, I'll upload that. And I forgot to do it until April 18th. And I tried uploading on April 18th, and that got kicked back to me. And I was like, and they basically told me, and I asked them, I called them the next day, I was like, why don't I have a NYSEF number? They said, well, we decided not to give you a NYSEF number. You don't need a NYSEF number. I'm like, they said, it's too much work. It's too much work. There's only a couple more filings coming on in this case. I said, so? You told me it was going to be a NYSEF number. No, I never said that. No, you did. I was there. You told me there is. He's like, I never said it, counselor. And I confirmed his name, which I'm not going to reveal here. And he's like, I never said that. I was like, no, you did. You did tell me that. And I don't know why I don't have one. He's like, because we're just not bothering with it. So what else? Do you have anything else you need? I'm like, it's almost like I feel like well, anyway, I'm not gonna. I'll reserve. I'm sharing with you factually what happened. So now, so when I come back home, I see my papers were rejected. Why were my papers rejected? Because they claimed that my attorney filed papers for me. Meaning Ron had e-filed his set of papers on behalf of Good Lawgic, and they looked at my papers and they said you can't have two different memos of law from one. So your attorney filed it, you can't file it here. So I said, okay, they need my affidavit of service anyway. So I came back home, created my affidavit of service, attached it in a PDF to my memo of law, and submitted it on digital submission because I don't have a NYSEF number, so I have to go back through the clerk again. And I called up the court. This is around 2:00 in the afternoon. And I called up the court and I said to them, and they said the guy I wanted to talk to, who I'd spoken to earlier in the day, which is not the guy who refutes my position about the whole NYSEF, whether or not I was told I was going to get a NYSEF number. But the guy who I spoke to this morning, and I asked for him, and they said he's on lunch. So I said, well, I'd like you to please give him a message. Please clarify to him that my papers are for me individually, and that I retain counsel on behalf of Good Lawgic LLC, and Good Lawgic's lawyers are putting in papers, and I'm putting in papers. And these are different papers for different petitioners. And that just because you see two sets of papers doesn't mean that one of us is precluded from putting in papers. Both of us can put in papers. So please make sure that's clear. And you'll see attached to my memo of law is my affidavit of service. I said, okay, I'll pass that along. At around 4:20 in the afternoon, my papers were kicked back to me. And Ron saw they were kicked back to me. He called me around 4:50. And he said, they're saying we're not entitled to submit a reply. I was like, why not? So he said, because this is going to get a little confusing here. I'm just warning you. We're going to get into procedure here, and it's going to get a little confusing. They said, because there's no opposition to your motion. So I need to explain to you the procedure. Some of you might get a little bit lost here. I'm going to do my best to explain it to you. What I initially filed was a petition, which for purposes of this whole thing, we can compare that to a complaint in a normal case. Okay? So I filed a petition, and I filed an application for emergency relief. This is a separate filing that's filed at the same time. So you have one thing here and another thing here. My petition has a notice of petition attached to it, which said everything on this petition is coming back on May 6th. At the same time, I filed an application for a TRO saying, I need relief now, right here, right now. And that was on April 16th when I went in before the judge. When you apply for a TRO, what I asked for was temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction. What's a temporary restraining order? What's a preliminary injunction? Okay, let's talk about a normal case before I make this uber confusing for you. Okay? In a normal case, okay, I'll give you an example of a case I actually did a few years back. Okay? Here's a case. Guy comes to me and says that a former employee of his is stealing his clients and wrongfully using his trade secrets is a former manager of his, and he's basically stealing their trade secrets and their client list, and he's stealing all that information from him. And I want you to sue him and stop him from stealing my clients, because every day I'm getting more and more clients who are being taken away from me. And we spent decades, we spent the last 8 decades, and it's a 100-year-old company, the last 8 decades building up this database, and he's had access to it, and he took it with him when he left, and we need you to stop him right here and now. So what do? Well, first I draft a complaint, and then I move for a TRO, a temporary restraining order. And this is all filed at the same time. So I file my complaint, and I file my TRO at the same time. You give notice to the other side, telling them, hey, I'm going to be coming in 24 hours now and looking for the following injunctive relief. And you get an idea as to what's coming in there. Under New York law, you have to give them 24-hour notice. It's under NYCRR 202.7. You have to give them 24-hour notice. So you give them the notice. Usually they come. Sometimes they don't. They haven't seen your papers yet. Often you haven't finished drafting them when you give them the notice. You just know, okay, I should have these done by then, and I'm going to get to court around this time, and that's the time they need to be there. Then, when you get to the courthouse, you pay for the index number that you're starting your case. You file the TRO, you pay your motion fees, which is another $45. Then you say, here's my application for emergency relief. You have to have all your papers in order, and there's a whole bunch of different sets of papers, and it's a separate second set of papers. You got your summons and complaint, and you have your TRO application. And the first thing you're asking for is a temporary restraining order. So in this particular case, with that case where my clients my guy was saying his clients were being stolen. So I was asking for a restraining order that immediately, today, the judge should stop and prohibit this manager from using any of the records that he took with him when he left. And you have to give out your basis as to why it is you're entitled. That's called injunctive relief. And you fill out the form that the judge is going to sign off on, and then basically he checks off and says, okay, this is the relief I'll give you. He'll cross out some parts, put in dates. And what does the judge say? He'll either grant the relief or deny the relief. And then he says, We want to give the other side, and what are you basically looking for? You're looking to set the ground rules that will govern throughout the entire time that this complaint is going on, because often a complaint can last, and a civil proceeding can last years. So this is designed to set the ground rules for how the parties will operate while the litigation is ongoing. But the immediate relief is called a temporary restraining order. We don't like giving one side a chance to put in written papers and the other side not having any chance at all to put in written papers, but New York recognizes sometimes people need relief today. So if you meet the yardsticks that are required, you'll get your relief that day. But what they say is come back very soon, 8 days, 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever. And during that time, the people opposing the injunctive relief, from the other side, the one who got the notice, they have time to put up papers. They've read your papers, and they put in opposing papers. And then we'll come back 2 weeks later, and usually you'll get to reply to it, often, if there's enough time, depending on how condensed the time is between when you come in on the first time and when you come in the second time. If there's enough time, they'll have time to reply. So, when you come back, now the judge says, okay, we had this TRO that I granted for the last week and a half. Now I'm seeing papers from both sides. Now I'm going to decide whether I want to leave a preliminary injunction in place. And if he agrees that the injunctive relief should stay in place, it gets converted from being a 2-week TRO into a preliminary injunction that will last for the rest of the litigation, whether the litigation lasts another 3 months or 20 years. That will stay in effect as to governing how things will operate between these parties while the litigation is going on. So you have the immediate relief, that's called the TRO, the temporary restraining order. And then when they come back a couple of weeks later, that would get converted into a preliminary injunction. If you're the movement, that's what you're hoping is going to happen. If you lose on the motion, then it gets converted into nothing and it dies right then and there. Sometimes you lose on the TRO, and then you can win on the preliminary injunction. You don't win on the first stage, but you might win on the second stage. Things can happen. You never know. Okay, so now you have a basic understanding as to how a TRO, what's born as a TRO, ultimately gets converted into a preliminary injunction. So when you're bringing your application for a TRO, you really ask for both. You say, I want to get a temporary restraining order and of relief A, B, C, D, and I want an immediate temporary restraining order, and I want to have a preliminary injunction of A, B, C, D. Sometimes the relief might be a little bit different between them, depending on how urgent and the nature of what you're fighting over. But that's essentially what you do. You ask for both, the TRO and the preliminary injunction. The first stage, the first time you come in there, there's only papers from one side. That's when the TRO is decided. When they come back a couple weeks later, that's when the PI, or the preliminary injunction, is decided. Now, with that backdrop, now I should point out one more thing here. The complaint that you file is called pleadings. The other part is a motion. The TRO is a motion. So your complaint is the pleadings, and the other part is a motion. When there's a response, they have to put in opposition to the motion, and also their own pleadings, their answer to the complaint. Okay. In this particular circumstance, I filed a petition and a notice of petition. Because when it's Article 78, it's not called a complaint. It's called a petition, and instead of a summons, it's called a notice of petition. In addition, I brought a motion for a TRO. Now, a petition in Article 7 petition is a little bit different from a complaint in that it's usually shorter and faster. Everything is decided usually faster. Not as fast as an emergency motion, but it's not supposed to take years. Everything should be decided over a few months. Now, my TRO is trying to take care of things in weeks, because months is too long, as you can well imagine. What the hell good does it help me to get this gag order off 4 months from now? That's not helping me. So that's why I have the petition, and then I have the motion. Now, my notice of petition, that's my pleadings, have a return date. What's the return date I put on them? Well, I wanted that to be pretty short. So I said, okay, what's the time parameter that I have to give them, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I put in my pleadings for notice for my notice petition that said, come back May 6th. That's what my notice petition said. Okay. Who gets the notice petition? Who's they? And it also gives them time parameter for putting an answer to my notice petition. So I said, we're going to get everything done here by May 6th. When I brought my motion, my emergency motion, and we're trying to work out the time parameters, I had all sorts of issues with, I had the holiday of Passover that's coming up in between, and I couldn't be there. So that's why when I was trying to set up what time we would come back, and they said, you have to pick a Monday. So I was like, all right, let me get the first Monday after Passover. What day is that? Oh, that's the same day, May 6th. So what does this mean? It means I have two things coming back at the same time. I got my notice of petition, and then I have this motion for emergency relief. Okay, two different things, same time. And they're pretty much asking for the same thing. Okay. Who is a party here? Because technically, the only people who get to plead are parties, people who are named as being part of the action. And who gets to put in an answer? And here's where you have your distinction. And this is where things get critical. So those of you who have stuck with me so far, I say, God bless you, because I know this is very complicated. I know it is. I know it is. I'm offering this up here for those of you who can understand, and some of you may not get it. And that's okay, because like I said, it's very complicated procedure. But the point is this. The clerk told me I have to notify the district attorney about my motion. So I notified them about my motion, and part of that was I attached the notice petition and petition. So I got them the motion papers and the notice petition and petition. Are they a party to this case? I respectfully submit, no, they are not. The only parties are Good Lawgic, LLC, Joseph Neerman, and the Honorable Juan Mershon. You know how you know they're parties? Because they're put in the caption. What about the ADA or the district attorney's office? What about the attorney general? Yeah, they're supposed to get served papers, and they arguably have a right to intercede and to intervene and have their voices heard, but they're not parties. They're just interested parties who the court will happily entertain if they come along. Okay. So what are they supposed to be putting, what papers are they supposed to be putting in if I understand everything here correctly, which my interpretation is the exact same as Ron had. We had the exact same conclusions before we spoke to each other. And we were all like, I know, yeah, I know, exactly. So, since the pleadings are really just two petitioners and one respondent, the only pleadings back should be coming from Judge Mershon, or in this case, the Office of Court Administration, because they're standing in place of Judge Mershon. So the OCA, they have every right to put in pleadings, including an answer. What about the district attorney? The district attorney is answering the motion. They're not a party. There's no statute which makes them a party. There's no statute which even says they have to be served. The only reason I served them is because the clerk demanded I serve it before they would process my papers. There's no order from Judge Rosado or any other judge who's ever looked at this case saying that they're a party to this case. And since they're not a party to this case, they can't put in pleadings. What they can put in is an opposition to my motion, almost like an amicus brief, right? Friend of the court coming in here. But over here, they're an interested party, so it's probably more significant than an amicus brief. But the point is that they could put in opposition to my motion, not pleadings. What did the ADA put in? He put in a verified answer, meaning pleadings. And when I saw that, I was like, why is he putting in pleadings? That makes no sense. And he put in 37 pages of pleadings. You want to know how long the OCA's pleadings were? 1 page. And the one page basically said, this is an application for relief by Joe Neerman and Good Lawgic seeking to overturn two gag orders issued by Judge Merchan. Attached here too is a copy of the gag orders. Boom. Doesn't say whether it likes my petition, dislikes my petition, took no position on it. That's their answer to my complaint. That's their opposition to my motion, which is weird. They didn't put in anything. They called it response to Article 78. That's what the OCA called it. Now, they're able to do whatever they want. They can decide to not put in papers. I don't care. That's up to them. The assistant district attorney has, in my estimation, a right to oppose the motion, but they can't put in pleadings. And yet the assistant district attorney called it a verified answer, which is a label you give to pleadings. It should have been opposition to the motion. That's what it should have been. Why did I respond to this when it's mislabeled? The reason I responded to it is because traditionally what I've seen courts do many times is if someone mislabels a paper, they'll just reconfigure it and they'll say, okay, it says verified answer, but we're going to read it as opposition to the motion. That's how we're going to interpret it. So since we're going to interpret it as opposition to the motion, so I better damn well have my reply ready. Now, this is where things get important because I'm not allowed to reply to pleadings unless the pleadings are looking for the relief of their own, which they're not. So I'm not allowed to reply to pleadings, but I can reply to opposition to my motion. So to the extent that so if there's any answer that the OCA put in, I have no legal right to reply. I have no statutory right to reply to that. If there's opposition to my motion, I can reply to it. In fact, there was time put in the order that actually said they have to get their papers in by April 29th. I have to respond by May 6th. So my point was, because the district attorney is not a party to the case, they have no right to put in pleadings. The only thing they have a right to put in is opposition to the motion. And if it's opposition to the motion, the petitioners have a right to move forward on their motion and reply. The clerk said, no, this is not opposition to the motion. This is an answer, and you do not have a right to reply, an automatic right to reply to an answer. So I said, I don't know why the clerk even accepted this as an answer. The district attorney is not a party. And since they're not a party, they're only allowed to weigh in on the motion, not on the notice of petition, not on the petition itself. So when they label it as an answer, the clerk should have rejected it, saying, you can't put in an answer because you're not a party. So I said all this to the clerk. The clerk said, no, he is a party. So I said, under what theory is he a party? He said, Counselor, you were at oral arguments. He made oral arguments. So I said, yeah, because he's opposing the motion. That has nothing to do with the pleadings. He goes, he's there. He's in. So I said, he's not in the caption. There's no order from the judge saying that they're a party. There's no statute which says they're a party. So the only way we can look at his answer is that it's opposing my motion. That's the only way we can look at it. And it's not really a verified answer. It's more opposition to my motion. And if it's opposition to my motion, I have a legal right to reply. In fact, it's even put in the order, the timeline for me to put in a reply. He goes, no, there's no opposition to your motion. It's just an answer. So I'm like, well, why didn't I get a chance to argue on it today? I don't understand any of this. If it was just a motion today, why didn't I get a chance to argue on it? That was returnable today. I don't understand anything. I should have been arguing on the motion then, because he said you have to review all the papers. What papers are you reviewing? There's no opposition to my motion. My motion has no opposition according to this logic. It makes no sense. None of this makes any sense. Ron Baruti, Good Lawgic's lawyer, was not happy. And he's like, look, this thing is basically under seal. No one can see it. And the clerk is basically, he's telling us that this is an answer, even though I don't understand how this guy has a right to put in an answer. And because it's an answer, we have no opportunity to reply. And basically, take your work and shove it up your own work hole. That's essentially what the clerk said. He said, if you don't like it, you can bring a letter motion and ask the court to accept your reply. So that's what I was talking to Ron Baruti about. And that's what he did. And that's what he drafted. So that should be decided, his letter motion as to whether or not our reply is accepted should be decided relatively quickly. And I don't know if he's filed it yet or not. But so that's why I wanted to update you all that despite the fact that I wrote a really good reply, but I think I'm really proud of my reply. Ron Baruti wrote a reply, which honestly I haven't had a chance to even review it yet. I'm not going to kid you, but he's actually very proud of it, and I'm confident. that his reply is really strong. One of the reasons I'm confident is because I saw his letter in motion. I can't share it with you now. Probably share it with you at some point in the future, but I saw his letter motion that he's planning on filing, and I'm not sure he might have even filed it by digital submission already, asking for the reply to be accepted. So that's the status. As of right now, our replies have not been accepted based on unilateral decisions from the clerk that I strongly disagree with. Now you understand where he's coming from. You understand where I'm coming from. And he says his basic position is the district attorney is a party. My position is, and accordingly can file pleadings. My position is I don't understand at all how that can possibly be. And he says, well, he argued. So I'm like, okay, he argued on a motion. So there you go. I'm not going to weigh in anything. That's the most factual breakdown I can give to you as to the status of everything that's happening. I don't know if any of you understood more than like 12% of what I said there, but can you do preliminary objection to the answer that was filed? No. No, I'm not even sure what a preliminary objection would be. Objection to the fact that it was accepted. So in the letter motion, I think he's saying that the verified answer from the district attorney should be rejected by the court because it's inappropriate. I think he's right. Or alternatively, convert it into opposition to our motion, accept it, and then accept our reply. But to take his papers and then not take our reply seems very inconsistent with everything that Ron and I understand about the CPLR. So that is the story. I know that was very lengthy. It was took me like a half hour to walk you through it. I think probably a handful of you probably understood everything I was just walking through. I know I broke it down as simply as I could. This is very technical court procedure. But yeah. This was yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of jumping through hoops. Oh, cool. Good. At least some of you get it. Good. Anyway, time for me to do my checkup on my give, send, go. We'll see how that's going. Give, send, go. Nice. Look at this. You know I'm gonna bump it, right? You know, I'm being real with you. I was like, I'm gonna bump it that 25. Anyway, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Teddy. 21,496. I don't think you're idiots. I just think it's very convoluted. But this is like when it came to drafting letter motion, I was like, I really don't want to have to draft this. I'm gonna have my lawyer draft this, at least good Lawgic lawyer. And then I have to sort of like say, probably needs to draft a one-page thing saying I individually join in the motion brought by good Lawgic. This is an interesting thought I never had before. If power couldn't be abused, no one would seek it. That's a very interesting statement. Did I really? Did I really miss that? I don't think I did. It was a 20 member drop? I didn't see that. Let me go check that out. Oh my God, there was Master Phillips. It doesn't come up. Why didn't that come up? It did not come up. Master Phillips. Sorry, I can't pull it. I wish I could. I'd happily do so. Let me see if I can go scroll back and find it. It didn't get starred. I don't know why. I'm not. Master Phillips dropping 20. Good Lawgic memberships. God bless you, Master Lawgic. You're Master Phillips. Master Phillips. Master Phillips. The disciple, Master Phillips, gifting 20, count them, 20 Good Lawgic memberships. The following people were gifted memberships courtesy of Master Phillips. SW, Epstein Bedsheet Necktie. I like it. Angela Brewer, King Mondor, XIPSRIX. Dark Avenger, Steve Weiberg Horseshoe. Joe Bickers, Sheep Farmer. Shell B. Tham. CG Boz. Sayafi. Tyler Cagito. Antoinette Ferrucci. The New Guy. Jason Lazat. Dopamine Octopus. Kylie Price. Swamp Sagacity. All these folks brought into the following courtesy of Master Phillips. This guy, every time he swings a hammer, he rings the bell. Every time he swings a hammer, he rings the bell. Thank you for calling this to my attention, Echo Victor. I don't know why it is that this didn't pop up in my, it's still not showing here for me. I don't know why, but I'm glad. I really appreciate you calling that to my attention. Those new 20 members of you, you might be saying to yourself, wow, I'm part of the following. And now it says I'm a follower. What does that mean? Is this some sort of cult? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. But no, it's not a cult. It's not at all a cult. Not at all a cult. No spaceships, no Kool-Aid, no tracksuits that are mandatory, mild farm work, no self-harm, no harming others, no virgin sacrifices, no goat sacrifices, no squirrel mutilations, no dancing around bonfires in the middle of a forest while tom-toms are beating away as you shuck off clothing, no sticking your head through windows and saying, here's Johnny. There's really nothing at all about this that is remotely cult-like. And I am not the leader. I am not the leader of the following, which is not at all a cult type of cult. It's really just about community unity, leadership training, and personal growth. That's all it is. That's all it is. I'm just a host. All right? Don't blame me. No spaceships. Remember, no Kool-Aid. No running shoes either, by the way. A lot of people get confused about this. They're like, oh, there's all the tracksuits and no running shoes. In fact, we discourage running. Running is greatly discouraged in the following. Digging is good. Digging is good. But running, no. Absolutely verboten. Verboten. But speaking of which, I need to share this with you. I need to call your attention to something. What is happening here? Oh, I see what happened. It stopped giving me. It's not. It stopped. None of. Oh my gosh! Nothing that's come up in the last. StreamYard's being annoying. Nothing that's come up in the last like 45 minutes showed as being like this wasn't started either. Wouldn't it be worth your while to bring suit against the court clerk for being a see you next Tuesday? I don't know that there is such a thing. I don't think I can do that. I don't know that I can. We'll see what happens. We're gonna see what happens. Bait the clerk and ask if he hates Jews. See, this didn't pop up on me. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's. I'm wondering how many things I missed because none of this showed. None of it. Oh my god. I'm scrolling back up because I don't know what else I may have missed. I apologize, but I do need to call something very serious to your attention before I wrap up here. Here it is. There it is. Master Phillips disciple number 7. I don't know why it is that they didn't click it off. Did the attorney file his appearance? I believe he did. I don't know. Nothing. I don't get to see it when he does. That's one of the things that's really stupid here about having digital submissions. But yeah, he did. I hope I didn't miss anything else. I hope I didn't miss anything else. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything here. God, when StreamYard goes to hell, everything in my life becomes very difficult. All right, so this is what I wanted to share with you because this is important. This is a service announcement here about an important thing. Very, very important thing. Which, let's face it, this is I bring important public service announcements. Okay.
Inviting any people of conscience in the Princeton community, students, faculty, alumni, to participate with the striking students in a solidarity fast. In just the last few hours, we have had commitments from at least 6 people from Princeton Theological Seminary to
4 of them are her.
participate in this solidarity fast, with more coming in by the hour. At the seminary, we've also been calling our school to disclose and divest for the last several years and want to join together with the students from the university in their hunger strike.
I'm convinced that she broke in the middle here to grab a snack.
Almost every faith tradition in the world engages in the spiritual practice of fasting. The 3 major Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, are no exception to this. Jesus himself said, of some evils in the world, they require both prayer and fasting. And we are here to live into that word. Fighting any people.
Wow. I have questions. If you had the capacity to fast, why? What? I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't think any of this is happening. I don't think any of it. I'm just saying. Oh my god. Okay. All right. Wow. There you go. So I bring two important service messages. So if you're in Princeton, okay. All right. I really should share that one with Nick. I understand that. It's not. Yeah. I gotta say, I'm fat. I wouldn't stand in front of a sign saying, hey, fast for cause X. I wouldn't. I'm a fat slob. In fact, even my on Passover when I had my nephews around, so I have twin 3-year-old nephews. And they were both telling me I was fat. And I was telling them that they're fat. I said, you're a fatso. And they're like giggling, you're a fatso. No, you're really fat. You're so fat you can't even fit in your pants. And they'd be like, you're fatter. I spent like 20 minutes telling them how fat they are. As it happens, when they were like a year old, they were really fat, and now they just look like healthy size. But yeah, no, they loved it. They kept telling me how fat I was. I kept telling them how fat they were. I was like, you're even fatter than your brother. They look exactly the same. So you're so fat, I don't know how you made it through the door. And they're just giggling away there. Giggling away. Oh my God. I thought it was the funniest thing in the world. So maybe I'm a bad influence on the youth. I don't know. I don't think I can sue the clerks, but I can potentially bring a request for relief. I don't care what anyone in chat says. I'm not trading in the tracksuits for overalls. I wouldn't either. Oh, fearlessly, can we try tracksuits in for great coveralls? It does look like a conductor type of thing happening. It does look like. I remember when Al Sharpton said he was fasting for something, and like an hour later he was eating Campbell's chicken soup. And they're like, and the reporters are like, aren't you fasting? He's like, this is soup. It's not food. Let me tell you something. When we fast, we fast. We fast. No food, no drink, no nothing. I don't buy for a second that any of these college kids are fasting. I don't buy that any of them are. I don't care how big or small they are. I don't believe any of them are. Any of them. I think every one of them, I think they have a whole pig out session in some private dorm room when they basically like, oh, I got to take a break and go to the bathroom. And they basically spend 45 minutes pigging out in their dorm room and then coming back. Oh, I'm so hungry. I don't buy it for a second. I want to park a Texas barbecue food truck. Trust me, they're all well fed. They're all well fed. All right. Anyhow, you got your updates. I think I covered everything I needed to cover. I think we're good. I think we are good. It's time for me to start wrapping up here. So, any questions? Oh, why? Nothing is popping here. I gotta complain to these folks. All right, tomorrow I'm gonna have Ron Baruti in here, my Good Lawgic's lawyer. He's gonna come in here. I'm gonna talk about the case. You're gonna see how based he is. Anytime I say anything that is less than 1,000% based, he yells at me. And sometimes I'm just trying to like slow him down. I'm like, dude, you can't start screaming how the clerk is acting like King George III. That's not going to be effective. It's not. He's gung-ho. Writes well. So from what I've seen, that letter motion that I saw was aces. Really solid. But anyway, that's all tomorrow. You're going to get to meet him tomorrow evening at 10. Until then, my friends, I thank you all for joining me. It's my pleasure. That's going to be tomorrow at 10 p.m. Until then, my friends, I thank you all for joining me. Even if you just finished, if you're behind, if you're in some Princeton dorm room and there's really nothing there, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is supposed to be my break. Trust me, do not eat the bugs. Just don't. I thank you all for joining me. Hope we had a good time. I will see you all, God willing, tomorrow at 10 p.m. Until then, look out for your loved ones. And as always, I say to you, good night and Godspeed.